Shrutismritipurananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashakritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavatyapta Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Gukarastvandakaro Vai Rukarastvanivartakaha Andakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Let's do this prayer specific to this Upanishad. Om Bhadram Karnebhi Shrunuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashyema Akshabhiryajatraha Sthirairangaistuštuvagum sastanubhihi Vashema Devahitan Yadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vriddhashapaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedaha Swasti nastarksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatir Dadhatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. All right, so just a few general comments before we begin the class. So I hope that everyone that had requested to get a copy of this book, Kaivalya Upanishad, has now received it. If you have not, then please let me know. We will try to find out. I'll trace it or just send you another one. I do have some extra copies that we can do. And for those of you that are perhaps new to the class and want to get a copy of the text, please do let me know. Send me your mailing address and we will send you the book. Okay. So that's one thing. Also, I think that one of the reasons I selected this Upanishad is because we do have, in addition to the classes, a textbook that kind of summarizes and not only summarizes, explains it in the words of Swami Viditatmananda. And just like we did in Drikdrishya Viveka also. So here, what I would suggest to you, you do what you need to, what works best for you, is, so there's two options of reading the book. One option is to read the section of the book that we are going to cover before a class. And the other option is to cover it after the class. Those are the two options, obviously. You should not be reading while the class is going on, obviously. So out of the two options, I think that it would be better for you to review the section after the class rather than before the class. You can do either one, you know. It's not a mandate or anything like that. It's just a suggestion. But in my way of looking at it, if you have gone through some of the basics in a verbal setting like this class, then to consolidate that it would be good to review your notes and along with reading the relevant sections from this book. So that would be my suggestion to you. So I think, for example, one if you want to call it a homework, so please consider it as a homework. What you might do is to actually go through, even though this is not a, I have not completely introduced, I have not given a complete introduction, but this is an exception. From then on, I think we should wait until the class is over. But on this introduction, what you might do is do it after this class, even though the class is not a complete introduction, but it'll be difficult for me to give a complete introduction without starting the class. It'll take me several classes. So what I would suggest is that you take as a homework in the next week or so, or perhaps in the next 2 weeks if you have short of time, go through this introduction from page 1 through the introduction of page 24. Okay? Then next week, I will go over the meaning of this special Shanti mantra, which we did today, Om Bhadram Karnebhi Shrunuyama Devaha, which is given on page number 25. Along with, we will do some other things. But then you could actually read the text of this Shanti mantra after the next class. So I hope I'm not confusing you. The homework would be to do the introduction in about 1 week now after this class, from page 1 to 1 to 24. Then after the next week's class, then do the Shanti mantra from 24 to 31. And then we will start the text itself on page number 33. Okay, so that would be my suggestions to you. Okay. All right, so with that, let's continue on with where we were last week. So what we had talked about was, and this continuation will be of today's class will be a continuation of the concepts that I had presented to you in the last class. So in the last class, the concept was that, like this family who had accepted the news of a son having met an accident and had already passed away, they had already accepted this unpleasant fact. They had already accepted it. And accepted it in the means that it was no longer a doubt in their mind. The railway department had already told them about exactly what the accident was, which of the railroad cars had flipped over, how many people died. All that was very authentic. It was not made up or anything like that. And with all of the sorrow and the unpleasantness and the inevitability of losing the son, they had accepted it. It turns out that it was a false acceptance. They did not know that this is not the case. There is no loss of life. Hey, just imagine we're not talking about trivial things This is why this example is given. And in the life of a loved one, especially, they say, it is very true, what they say is very true. Probably the worst thing that can happen in one's life to anyone is to lose your own offspring before you lose your own life. They say that there is nothing worse than that as a sorrow in your life. Even worse than losing your own life is to see that your own son or a daughter has passed away. One can never get over that. It's a very, very sorrowful event. So imagine to bring back from the depth of such sorrow. Okay, so please see the analogy that we are taking up. So here the analogy to what we experience in our life is that it is very strange that I am a living being experiencing the richness of this life, and all of a sudden, either all of a sudden or gradually or something, doesn't matter how sudden it is. But what I wanted to say was certainly this life is taken away from me. It is something incongruous, unacceptable. And for those of us that have had a loss of life of our family member or friends, close acquaintances, if you go to the funeral, it's interesting I've been here in this country now for 55 years, and for 80% of my stay here was when we were relatively healthy, our friends were healthy, they were generally young. So it's not as though you did not see death around you, but in our case, we did not see death of the closed ones. I remember talking to my mother a long time ago, and if you look at a normal life in India, what you will see is normal life means that you are middle-aged and 50 or something like that, somewhere in that time. What you will see is that every now and then you attend a funeral, and every now and then you congratulate somebody for the birth of a baby. And so both of these events, one is the arrival and one is the departure, was a normal part of your life. Well, that didn't happen to us for the 80% of our time here in this country, because most of us were relatively young, and so there were a lot of births, our own children, grandchildren, and so on. There were relatively few deaths. Relatively. Not that they were not the deaths of the local population, but amongst the Indians who were emigrating, we did not see that many deaths. I remember this so well. Well, all of that has changed a lot in the last 20% of our stay, in the last 10 years. I cannot believe how many people, and with me it is somewhat exaggerated because as a teacher of Vedanta and so on, I'm called upon to associate myself with many funerals, which is natural. People ask for when they are in a dire stage, they don't know who to go to, and I can, about 15 years ago, I remember getting a call from someone which says, Vijay uncle, we are in, my father passed away in France. He was an Indian guy, and we don't know what to do. I wonder if you can please help us. I mean, I think that was my first direct involvement, and so I had to do, which I have now done about, I don't know, 8 to 10 times. So anyway, I didn't want to go through all of this, but what I'm saying is that this is the central point. When you go through the passing away of people, there's obviously the sorrow of losing someone and so on. But more than that, there's something strange. How is it that we are fully functional, fully involved with things, and making plans and having breakfast and lunch and so on and so forth, and all of a sudden we're gone? There's a there's Swami Dayanand used to say that. He says, there was this old lady, which is familiar to us. Even my father used to say that. When my father was losing the control of his limbs and so on, he died at the age of 91, about maybe 15 years ago, maybe 17 years ago. And for the last few times, he used to say, I think my time is over. I don't know why God has made me linger on. I want to go. My mother used to get really upset and she says, hey, you're doing well. Why do you keep on asking this? So on and so forth. Anyway, he finally went one day. So Swami Dayanand used to give this story. He says, there was this old lady, who said, oh, Paramatma, please take me away, because I'm just a burden to my family and I'm not really able to help them very much. They are the ones who have to take care of me and this, that, or the other. So please, one of these days, please do that. I'm ready to go. So one day, she was sitting in the morning, and so as the story goes, Lord Yama, in the Western world also there is the Grim Reaper. And so the picture of the Grim Reaper is that you get a person whose face is completely covered with a black cloth, and he's carrying a pasha, some kind of a weapon that he could take you away. His whole thing is completely black. So similarly, Lord Yama, who is Lord of Death, he suddenly appeared in front of her and said, Amma, you have been calling me. I was very busy. I think we are ready to go. So she says, what? Who are you? He says, I am Lord Yama. You are the one who was calling me. He says, yes, I was calling Ishvara. He says, Ishvara sent me. I am the person who's supposed to do that. He has listened to you, and he did not agree first, but now he feels okay. Time to go. So here, I have a lot to do. Let's go. She says, wait a second. Wait. Not yet. He says, what do you mean by not yet? You've been asking, I want to go, and so on. She says, yes, but you know what? I haven't had breakfast yet. Swamiji used, in his own words, he used to make us laugh. and he would pepper the story with lot of spices and so on. He was so funny. But anyway, what I'm saying is that it is really strange that that there's something funny about this whole thing. Why did God create this have this whole creation? All of a sudden, the life comes to a complete end. And the whole experience of living and supporting and enjoying and even having some problems and so on is completely taken away. But it doesn't matter whether it is strange or not, you just accept it as that's how it is. This is what life is all about. And it's you have very few moments when you are completely happy, and the rest of the moments are full of problems and so on and so forth, and then after that life ends. So this is the equivalent to this family accepting that our son has been lost. So if you parlay that into your own life, it is accepting that even though it is unpleasant, there's nothing else we can do. That's all. This is the way it is. You ask everybody around, you look at your own experiences, you look at the experiences of your forefathers, experiences of the wisdom in the world, and nobody says you can escape it. This is it. You're gone. So that's the analogy of the story. A very powerful story, I think, if one thinks about it. As unpleasant as it is, you accept it. In the midst of this, there is a knock on your door which says, no, don't accept it. It is not true. Your son is alive. And so the equivalent to that is the Vedic statement through somehow or the other. You are not a limited person who is subject to death. Mortality that you have accepted is not the truth. You are in fact immortal. You never had a beginning. You're always there. You are not made up of something that could be dismembered, that can be destroyed. Not possible. Even if you want to be destroyed, you cannot destroy yourself. This is the truth. And you say, what? I don't believe this. How is that possible? Because it's not the life's experiences. It's not the life experiences of anyone. Not mine, of course, because I'm not dead yet, even though I have been dying for millions of times. But at this stage, I don't feel like I'm dead yet, I'm alive. But the experiences of everybody says that we are time-bound. We are mortal. We are not immortal. And for you to just come in and say this all of a sudden in the middle of this, how am I going to believe you? So as the analogy said, which was a very beautiful thing that was brought up by Swami Maheswaranji, he said, you see that the railway department that gave you this so-called authentic news. It's not as though they were lying. They were not. They just didn't know. That out of the 200 people, 5 or 6 had survived. They just didn't know who it was. And they should have said that to somebody, that maybe a few of them survived, so they just took a block view and said that 200 people have died. And if your son had a first class ticket, then he was one of those. So they had a clear premonition. They were not lying. Similarly, here also, the Vedanta says, listen, I know this looks very hard to believe in the beginning, but the reason is that all of your experiences are through the medium of your mind. Isn't it? Because any conclusion, any inference, any acceptance, any factual way of looking at things is all the work of your mind. And the mind is like a flashlight which can light up everything in its scope. So this is in Sanskritam called Vishaya Gocharam. Vishaya Gocharam means that it is the purview of being an object. And you can expand it by having some special instruments that can enhance your vision. Your eyes may not be able to see a bacteria or virus, but you can enhance your understanding by having microscopes and particle colliders. And so then all of that can be done, yes, but they are all subject to being viewed with your senses and your mind. Your conclusions are all based on that. Like a flashlight who can show the flashlight all over. In a dark spot, you can move it anywhere. But my dear, the flashlight cannot see the batteries that make the flashlight work. Cannot do that. And so therefore our mind can only see my life's experiences and draw conclusions from it, and you can discuss it. So you have, it's like multiple people in a room all having flashlights, and you're all looking for something, precious. And so there may be a big hall or a big multiple rooms, and there are all people are trying to search. Some people is in that room, some people is in that corner of this room, whatever. You can imagine all the flashlights. And so you can ask, what are you all searching for? Well, we're searching for some object that we lost. But in this whole thing, no matter how many flashlights there are, if you're searching for the batteries, none of them is really useful. You're missing out on something. If you are searching for objects, fine. But if you are searching for the batteries that are making the flashlight work, if that happens to be your search, then all of the searches are useless. In fact, this is exactly the the topic of Kena Upanishad, which we are doing on Tuesday nights, in terms of the concept of Vedantic insights. And because Kena Upanishad starts with this, Keneshitam Preshitam Patati Mana. He says, impelled by whom does the mind work? And so this is a very intelligent question, which we do not ask, because until we become somewhat mature, or we are very fortunate to be under contact of this vidya, of this knowledge, which says the mind concludes, but who is behind the mind, which is unchanging? So that vidya, that question doesn't appear to us. And if you analyze your life, that's exactly what we are seeking. We want an end to the transient nature of our life. But we don't know what it is, so we accept it. We are searching all over for something which doesn't. It's like, it's like a journey which doesn't seem to have an end. And we all want to really sit down and relax. So traveling, for example, especially since I started studying Vedanta for the last 50 years, has never been one of my favorites. Because what I find is that traveling is so transitory, so transient. And it is so full of problems. Getting a ticket is a problem. Paying for it is a problem. And getting out of the comfort of your home is a problem. Getting up early at ungodly hours is a problem. All for just a few moments of gazing at things. I remember, you're part of a family, and so sometimes you have to give in. Some of the friends who said, no, we are going on this cruise, you have to join us. And I didn't want to really do that, but you're part of a family and everybody else is. I remember this so well. This is like 4 or 5 years ago. So we took this cruise it was a Atlantic cruise, and we went to Sweden and then all the way up to Russia, and then came back. And so we visited a lot of these these cities and so on. Some of that was kind of nice, but I was remembering, I was looking at it. So we visited some of these smaller countries on the way to Russia. Can't even remember their names. So they're out of my system now. But I remember taking a tour during the day, and this docent who was showing us all the cultural things were saying, look at this door. And now look at this door. Now, don't you see that they are fundamentally different? And in fact they are, because this had Swedish influence and this had Russian influence. So do you see the changes and everybody was going, oh my God, that is correct. Wow. And they were making notes and taking pictures and so on. So I was sitting there and saying, what is all this? This is what life is all about, to look at differences in the doors. So what? And then you just go on to the next place and so on and so forth. And then the food is, uncertain. You don't get vegetarian food at traveling is just, to me, it's for the birds. Anyway, so so we are looking for something which is, it is so much better to be able to sit down and think about things and just be with yourself. Learning to be with yourself is a very big thing. I think I was telling this other class on Tuesday night that in the last anniversary celebration, Swami Tadatmananda, who is one of the students of Swami Dayanandji, had given this example at the last anniversary on the 15th of August. And he says when Swamiji first came to India, he was waiting for, he dialed a number and this person put him on hold and put a music on. So in 1970s when Swamiji first came from India, he didn't know why there is music on being put on hold. And especially the music which is Western music, which he was not familiar with. So after experiencing this for a couple of times, he asked someone. He says, I don't understand, what is this music on being put on hold? So he said, Swamiji, it is so that you are not bored with yourself. You're not bored. Just to keep you engaged. Swamiji did not understand the concept of being bored. He says, what do you mean by bored? I mean, either you are doing something or else you are just being with yourself and it's very pleasant. So I don't understand the concept of being bored with yourself. Anyway, so this is exactly what it is, because this actually expresses our life's experiences, because you know what? If you're not doing anything, then at the subconscious level, first unconscious and then subconscious level, you may not be bored, but at the subconscious level, you are concluding, all is not well with me. All is not well with me. Which is an expression of the acceptance of mortality in my life. Because you can start, oh my gosh, time is passing. And in some ways, this is kind of like a shruti in the background which says, all is not well with me. All is not well with me. And Swamiji used to say that, and this is a common experience, when people drink, when you go to this happy hour and you have 2 drinks for half the price, what happened in drinking or in any other similar kind of experience, you drown out this feeling that all is not well with me. So like even in the travels, when you're admiring this door, which is either Swedish or is it Russian, you're so busy admiring that and being so involved that this shruti in the background which says all is not well with me is drowned out. And you like it. Because if you're not doing anything, there is this shruti. You don't have to say anything about it, but this is kind of like a tanpura. In the Indian music, you will have tanpura. It's called shruti. And so the main singer is singing a song, and when the in-between song, there is this doom, doom, This is called Shruti or Tanpura. And so that Tanpura is what is called boredom. Boredom means, who am I? What am I doing? As long as you're busy with things and so on and so forth, this Shruti gets drowned out. Just like the singer is singing, the Shruti is drowned out. So you're okay with that. But the moment you don't do anything, this Shruti comes in. And this is an accepted Shruti. So all is not well with me. You don't have to articulate it, but it's in the background. And the elements of this are, my life is passing. And I don't know where I'm going. What's happening? So this is exactly the situation that we are in. And so this is a part and parcel of the acceptance of the so-called bad news that this life has ups and downs, but it's interesting, but it doesn't last. And I have no idea what happens to me. So this is what I was saying when I was talking about in the last 20% of my life here. This is what really used to, trigger my thoughts. How can this person, who's got so much life in that person, where did he go? I remember, before that, I never really experienced death at close by. But then as I grew older, and because I was called upon to do it, I could tell, in fact, that I have really seen the last breaths of several people. And one moment their eyes are open and they're talking and so on. The next moment they're gone. There is no movement in their bodies. And you think about it and you say, oh my God. Where did he go? What happened? And so the Vedanta says there's something very understandable about all this. And there is the person might seem to disappear, but he doesn't disappear. He's around. In fact, the essence of that is the same as the essence of you, which is consciousness. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. But here, you should see the analogy of the message of the Upanishad. So the message of the Upanishad is exactly like this person who said, is this the house of Mr. and Mrs. such and such? And he says, yes. And he has a smile on the face. And he says, I'm carrying this mithai. Congratulations. It's exactly like the Upanishad says, did you think that you are mortal? So we said, what do you mean? What a question to ask. Isn't everybody mortal? No. I don't know about everybody, but you are not mortal. What? So this is the meaning of the word Upanishad. So before we go to Kaivalya Upanishad, I wanted to expand on this word Upanishad a little bit. So this word Upanishad, and I think this is one of the characteristics of the Vedic words. All of the words, forget about concepts, just the words used in Vedas, in Vedanta, all Vedas, not just in Vedanta, is based on a meaning. So every word has a content which is what is called dhatu. Dhatu means verb. In grammatical terms, it's called verb. But dhatu really means the essence of the word. So the entire meaning of what the word is trying to convey is contained in the elements of the word itself. So the Upanishad is not an exception. It's a word that we must understand very clearly. Not must, but it would be nice to understand this clearly. So you don't look upon this as an object, like I mentioned to you in the last couple of classes, that in the beginning, the books as are like a mirror to you. But really speaking, the mirror is not for the viewing of the book as a separate thing. It is a reflection of who you are. And so the word Upanishad also looks like it's a word, but in fact it is a reflection of the process of learning about yourself. How? Why are we saying it? So if you look at this word Upanishad, it has a dhatu which is called sat. Not sat, but sad. Upanishad. The third one in the dental in Sanskritam. Na. So the third one, aspirate, is called the. So it has sad as the dhatu. And there are two prefixes to sad. One is called upa and the other one is called ni. So the prefixes are modifiers. So the substance is in the word sat. And because of the sandhi rules, the connection between words, the sad turns into shad. But the essence is sad. So we will go into the meaning of the word sad in a minute. But let's look at the two prefixes, upa and ni. Okay? So let's look at upa first. Upa means near. Near. So it reveals something about something very close to you. Not far. So this is interesting that most of our Upanishads and even Prakarana Granthas, like Drikdishya Viveka, so we begin by examining things that are very close to you rather than something that is far from you. Later on, things that are near you are nothing but a reflection of things that are far from you. So that equation comes later. But very naturally, the search for something which is close to you makes sense because you can relate to it better. Like, for example, in Drikdishya Viveka, I remember the very first verse. Rupam drishyam lochanam drik, tad drishyam driktu manasam, drishyaha dhivrittaya sakshi drigeva natu drishyate. In giving this, doing the viveka between drik and drishya, the seer and the seen, it says, let us look at your eyes. lochanam drishyam. He says your eye is the seer, and the various objects that you can see are the seen. But then the eyes also become seen, and your mind becomes the seer. So like that, I won't go into any more details on that. I think those of you that have studied it know it by now, that this Drikdrishya Viveka is started at close to you, something that you can relate to. You can say, yes, that is right. My eyes can see as a singular thing, and all the other things that it sees are multiple things. But then the eye itself has multiplicity, because my mind can say that my eye is working, not working. So this whole feeling of multiplicity and singularity, of being seer and seen, can be related to something very close to you. That's the point I'm making. So the Upanishad also starts by saying something that you could relate to immediately, something that is true, because that's the truth of it. So naturally something that you should be able to see. It's not like that, I'm going to talk about God and you may not be able to see it for quite a while. Well, my mind is not accepting it. But something which is immediately related to me, I can see. So that's the first word, which is called upa. Okay? The second word is called ni. And the ni is a short form of nishchaya. Nishchaya means ascertained truth. Ascertained truth. Where there is no doubt that enters the picture. It is done. It's complete. In fact, sometime we will take up this very famous and that we chant it very often. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. With this word Purnam, Purnam means fullness. So the word Purnam and Kaivalyam, which we will study in more detail, are all the same. And it is Nishchitam. It is ascertained. So this is a very interesting thing and an important thing to grasp. It turns out that you may have heard of this, which is really the truth. For things in this world, the more you know, the less you know. There is a saying, and there is a lot of truth in it. Not a lot, it is basically true. The more you know, the less you know. So Swami Dayanandji had this beautiful example that he used to give. He says, take a look at a rose flower. Just a simple flower, rose, or any other for that matter, just a rose. So, a casual observer may not know much about it other than that it has some very nice color and it has a nice smell, aroma to it. And a sort of touch to it, that's it. But suppose you want to really know more about it. What makes this flower a rose? what you will do, you will become an expert, not expert, but you will study horticulture. And there will be, inevitably, there will be a Latin name. And out of the Latin name, then you will say what type of a rose it is. There will be a Latin name for that. You will see how this rose grows, the seedlings first. So you're increasing your knowledge about the rose. And you feel that at some point in time, I will know everything about the rose. The life of it, the origin of it, the differences between different color roses. The scientists say the more you know about the rose, the more you feel there is so much more to know that I don't know. Like, for instance, the rose has a particular aroma to it. What is the aroma? It is so subtle. How did it come about? You can be multiple PhDs and not come close to it. And if you do get some insight into it, you will say that it opens up some new areas of search and uncertainty. This is the truth about everything. On a casual level, you can say, oh, this is just a table. It is just a, this happens to be, it's interesting, this table that I'm using. This is imported from India. When did I come to this country? 64. Probably is about 52, 53 years ago. We brought some furniture from India. We liked the very carving and so on and so forth, and we just brought it from there. And I remember this is what is called rosewood. It's rosewood. So you can say this is rosewood, that's it. Do I know everything about this table by now? Yeah, I think so. It's rosewood and it has some characteristics. It doesn't scratch easily. It's very solid. It's very dense and it can withstand some carving. That's it. Look into it more and more, you will find there is so much more to know. As you know very well, I've discussed this. Do you know that any solid object like a table is not really a solid object? This is the truth. 99.99999, I don't know how many nines, is all space. These are a bunch of electrons and protons that are moving around. And so the solidity is actually a magnetic field. The solidity of my hand and the solidity of the table repel each other. So it's actually speaking, my hand is also completely space and the table is also completely space. They should be able to go right through it. But from a magnetic standpoint, they don't allow it. It's like having two magnets with the same polarity. They don't allow it to come together. If it's one positive and one negative, they attract. But if there are two positives, you cannot bring them close. Exactly like that. It's an amazing amount of knowledge that has to be gained that you do not know this, you can only know when you know more about it. So we can say the more you know, the less you know. However, there is an exception. There is an exception to this when it comes to yourself. Yourself is different. It's a very funny situation. It's a funny situation because the one that you are not, anything like a table, you cannot know everything about it. Never. The more you know, the less you know, as we just went through. This is not true for yourself. What do you mean by not true for myself? So what is the situation? The self is you do not know at all in the beginning. But as you begin to know about what it is, you will know it completely. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnam. So Purnam means complete. How is this? So I don't understand this. In one case it can never be complete, in the other case it can be complete. How? Because the self, the consciousness is not made up of things. Anything that is made up of parts cannot be completely known. How you can guess quite a bit about how the parts come together, but not completely. But if you are not even made up of parts, if it is self-existent and partless, like space, space is not made up of parts. Everything else other than the space is made up of parts. But the space is there but not made up of parts. You cannot dissect it. You know it completely. Similar to that is the Atma. That once you know it, we miss it right now because we don't know exactly what to look for. As we saw that somebody has to tell us. The mind cannot tell that my son is alive. The railway department doesn't know. Similarly, my mind does not know that I am immortal. So here, it's interesting. My mind is the Shruti, as we saw earlier, which says, all is not well with me. Don't know how long I'm going to live. Excuse me. Don't know what is happening to me. All of that, the mind doesn't know. Not capable of knowing, except if somebody says, that's not true. You are blaming the wrong person. You are not just one limited thing. This is exactly like what we have given this example before. That if you think you are the room space, if you've convinced yourself that I am this room space, this is all I am, fine. But if the room space starts to have a problem, we have to tell you, you are not the room space. In fact, you are space. The room space is enclosed by the walls of the room, whereas the space is enclosing all the walls. It's just the opposite. So this can be completely known without any unknowingness. That's the point I'm saying. That word is captured in the word ni. Nishchaya Atmika in Sanskritam. Nishchaya Atmika. Nishchaya Atmika means the nature of Nishchaya, ascertainment, Purnatvam, not possible to be disturbed. Once you know it, you know it. There's nothing more to be learned. You're done. There's never this uncertainty that, like the scientists have, that my gosh, we now know 99% of the rows, but that 1% we don't know. That is the nature of Maya. The word anirvachaniya is Swami Maheshanandji had beautifully pointed out. The word anirvachaniya I don't want to give you a lot of new words that I don't have time to explain. But anirvachaniya means what cannot be, one which is not nishchaya atmika, which is full of doubts, because the mystery of the world is, it can never be solved. Never. It is because the Maya is the very nature of the mystery. The Maya is the mystery. You cannot say Maya has mystery. It is mystery. Swami Maheshanji had given a beautiful example. He says, supposing you have coal, C-O-A-L, coal. You cannot make the coal any darker. It is the nature of the coal is darkness, it's blackness. So similarly, the very nature of Maya is mysterious. Why things happen the way they don't, you can explain 99% of it, but that 1% opens up new areas that you don't know. You're back again to I don't know. Not sure. Swami Maheshanandji used to say that even the best Ayurvedic doctors, or even the allopathic doctors and so on, who are really experts, who are experts in something. Nowadays, every part of the body has an expert. So you have a separate doctor for legs, separate doctor for feet, separate doctor for heels, nails. Every little part of the body has so much specialty, and deservedly so, because it is so full of uncertainty that the more you specialize, the better off you are. And so, no matter how you specialize, you can never be an expert at the whole world. And so, really speaking, Maya is mystery. It is mysterious as the very nature of the mystery. It's in fact a miracle that we can figure so much of it out. And that actually creates a problem for us. That we can figure out so much gives me the feeling that I can figure everything out. You see? Like seeing the rows, you say, I don't understand why are people doing PhD? I don't know, it'll be interesting to find out how many people are doing PhD on the rows. There probably are. Because validly there are areas that have not been explored yet. I read somewhere that if you look at the flora and fauna, or even leave aside, if you just look at living beings on the earth, I read that somewhere. You look at living beings on the earth, you can classifying them as being out of the water or inside the water, inside the ocean and outside the ocean. And again, I may not be very accurate at this, I'm just sort of giving you some approximate idea. They say that a vast majority of living beings, not human beings, but all living beings, above the water, who live in the air, have been identified. Very rarely you would see a brand new specimen of some fly or a bug or some kind of a frog that people have not seen before as being classified. And it happens. The other day they were saying there was some kind of a new frog that they discovered in Australia that they had never been. So now it's been catalogued. So pretty soon so anyway, the point is that the majority of the things, living beings in the world have been catalogued above the ground. The majority of living beings inside the water has not been categorized, which is a very strange statement to understand, because we think that we know all about fish and turtles and this, that, or the other. No. There's so much that more that needs to be explored, that it is not true that they have been done. Anyway, this is all about the ascertainment. But the ascertainment of Atma, the self, the real us, is completely different. It is totally unknown, and then through the process of Upanishad, you have a state of totally knowing it without anything left out. In fact, that is really the word of Kaivalyam. So, Kevalasya bhavamiti Kaivalyam. The sense of being alone. Alone means only one, without the second. The one that encompasses everything. Nothing is left out. So that is the word ni for nishchaya. These are the two prefixes to the word sat. Sorry, sad, not sat, but sad. And the meaning of the sad is exactly like the message of this person who knocked on the door. And he says, "Are you the one who think they have lost your son? Is this the house where there is a lot of sorrow going on?" So you say, "Yes, of course." He has a big smile on the face and he says, "Don't. Your sorrowful nature is not true." That is the meaning of the word sat, which we will explore in the next class. Okay? So with that, I close off this class, and hopefully we'll see you next week. I think what I will do before I start the class next week about the meaning of the word sad which is the very core of the word Upanishad, we will go over the Shanti Patha. So once again, you kindly look at the introduction, which is quite a very long introduction by Swamiji, and make some points if you want to. But my introduction will take a little longer time, so you don't have to finish it, but at least go through it for some. Then wait for my explanation of the Shanti Patha of next week. Then next week go over the text for the Shanti Patha. And then after that, in a couple of weeks, we will begin the text. So right now, I know that you have this book available, but we won't get into the Upanishad itself for a couple of weeks. But still, if you do need to have a copy of this, do let me know, as I mentioned before, and I'll be glad to. I do have some extra copies. So with that, I close the class and we'll see you next week. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Next week, I think what I will. Good, very nice to see you all. Happy that you joined the class. Welcome Shankar Parasaram. Glad that you joined the class also. If there's any questions, please let me know. Again, let me say the same thing that I did. I said the same in the earlier class today, which is that if you happen to be watching these classes, but you're not expressing on the chat window, do let me know that you are engaged in the class, and both for my benefit, but also for your benefit, so you also feel a sense of belonging. So it doesn't have to be done every time, but once in a while, if you could just send me a brief note saying, I'm watching these classes, listening to them, that will be nice. I really appreciate many of you that are watching both classes. That I don't understand how you can spend that much time on a Saturday But best wishes to you. And again, if you did not receive the book, then let me know by now. I think you should have received it by now. Okay, I don't see any other questions. So with that, I say goodbye to you, and we'll see you next week. Om.